Got a little ahead of myself here. I'm really busy today. Trying to get 4 units built. 2 built already. It's 11 o'clock. Got 2 to go. So I already had started taking this apart without thinking I needed to film it. So I always usually put the Honda. Well, I sent the wrong one. So I asked for the Honda LK kit. I believe that's the one I needed. Maybe I ordered wrong. Yeah, let's look at the instructions. I wonder if I got the wrong kit. Let me see what they sent me. I got the right kit. So, yeah, they sent the wrong. They sent the wrong younger or Transgo kit. It's supposed to be this one, Honda LK. Anyhow, that's the one I normally put in there. The end plug kit from Sonex for the valve body. Of course, the filter. Both my diff bearings and races. The LS kit, which is a kit with clutches. And the main part of the valve body here. Sure we are looking good. Yeah, it's looking good. Alright, so we'll get going on this one. Always going to want to make sure that this bearing back here is all the way down. Especially after you put it in the cooker, if you got one, and it gets hot, that bearing tends to slide forward. Now, Sonex makes a shim that you can put on the end of your converter, and it'll help keep this bearing back. You can buy it if you want to. I just stake it into place. On your front seal, you're going to want to look right here. There's little lines. You want to look at the direction that they're going. And you want to make damn sure that your front seal, actually any seal, is going the same direction. I don't put anything on my front seals on purpose. I want it to be a snug fit. I don't want that thing coming back out. My axle seals, I'll lube them up a little bit. It helps them go in easier. You want to go in flush. Lever seal, lube it up really good. Okay, on our valve body we got dowel pins on every level. This bottom one's going to take 3, one here, here, and here. On our main valve body down here, we're going to pull this plug out. We're going to get one of the small plugs that comes in the end plug kit. Come on. Notice that one end has that dimple, one end has an O-ring, and it has a cutout right there. That cutout needs to face the valve, and you need to make sure that your end plug is all the way back up against the snap ring or the clip that holds it in. Because if it's not and it's shoved back in the bore, your valve may not stroke. And we're going to pull the one out on the end down here. It's the medium-sized one that comes in the kit. There's one medium, one large, and the rest are small. Same thing, you want the O-ring in, and that little notch facing the valve. It has to have that notch. If you get one that doesn't have it, don't put it in. All my dowel pins, none of them wanted to come out. Alright. We're going to put this bearing in. There's another thing that went flying out. And once you get your case hot, you start blowing some of this stuff out. It tends to fly away, and this little thing right here, took me forever to find it. It went all the way up underneath the solvent tank. How it got up there, I don't know. This dowel pin's probably still in the housing that goes there. So I'm just going to leave it out for right now. The main pump gear goes that down. Your pivot pin is the notch down. Now the manual valve needs to face this way. This piece goes on top. Your spring is going to hook into here, and your manual valve into here. Everything about this unit coming apart, going back together, is just really not wanting to go. Well, I understand why. Take that back out. Here's one already in the valve body. There we go. You can put your manual valve into low gear. $10mm. Might as well stick with our theme as far as Hondas go. Inch 615. The 312s are inch 544. Check ball is 218, goes in this hole right here. The little spring that sits on it is free length of 540, 222, 24.5. The spring sits on top. Then for your kit in here, this is what normally comes in the tranny. You're going to throw this spring away. Okay, you're going to get all this in your kit. I have yet to use any of this stuff. I'm always using these over here. It's always the white spring, never the blue, so far. So you need the white spring. You need to follow the instructions, but almost every one of them is the white spring, a 1-notch pin. Then you're going to put your plunger on top. And down inside there, there's a little groove over here where the oil goes, and they give you this this little thing in the kit. Now, I don't take it out and put it in there anymore, because I've gotten to where I can just eyeball it and I know it's good. But you're supposed to push. Dang, look at all this crap in here. You're supposed to push the valve down and take that little lip, or that little turn part. As long as it'll fit in that groove, you're good to go. You get your drill bits. We'll do that here after a while. Go ahead and throw that away so it's not messing with me. And put my dowel pins in. Okay, now let's see where we were. Alright, go get my accumulator body. Down in here, you don't need to take that apart, just to show you what's in there. Just leave it in there. You don't need to take that bolt off or nothing. There's 2 check balls, and they're 218 thousandths. Like I said, you can just blow it out and it's just fine. Alright, for our accumulators, our small one, inside spring, 2-inch 102, 491, 97, outer spring, 2" 531, 759, 106, a large one, outer spring, 3" 129, 829, 101. Make sure it goes down inside that little lip down inside there. Make sure it's sitting down in that pocket. Both of them. 2" 45 thousandths, 577, 107. Okay, when you're putting your snap rings in, put the snap ring away from the end, away from the opening right there. It don't matter where, just away from the opening. Alright, our tube, 392 thousandths, 2" 356. Three long bolts. They are 3" 184. The other three bolts are 1" 978. Well, camera did it again, just quit recording. Luckily I saw it when I came back in. From the factory they got little screens that go in here, just throw those things away. Alright, reverse servo. Alright, we got problems. The valve body that they sent is not right. All my passages are wrong. So, that puts a wrinkle in things. Alright, we'll continue on. We'll just have to keep going. So I gotta have my cart to put other parts on. And hopefully the valve body will show up today. I kind of doubt it. really puts a wrinkle in things, because I already had everything set up to go this direction, and now it's all screwed up. Alright, there's nothing more important you can do to this unit than these two valves right here, these CPC valves. Now, I don't have one up here, but I got a wire brush that's similar to that. And as I get in here, I get the solvent running down into there, and as I get in there and I work it back and forth and back and forth, just a whole lot, brushing out anything that's in there. Then I take some Scotch-Brite, just go down to the grocery store, and this will last me for the rest of my life, probably. Just take a piece of the Scotch-Brite, and I cut a strip. I usually cut it in half, and then you can see the strip I have is about yay wide, so it's about 1/4 inch wide, maybe a little wider. Doesn't really matter how wide you cut it, and just polish your valves. Just get on here and polish your valves up really good. Then once you do that, get you some Aero Coil or some PB Blast, and you really can't put too much on here. So you got your spring, so we go ahead and measure our springs. They're both the same. Free length of 704, 231, 28.5. And put your spring on here. Just lube the crap out of it. Get that down into the bore, spray some into the bore, and get you a magnet and just work that thing. I mean, just work it. You want that valve where it just falls in. If it won't just fall in, you need to keep working on it. And if you do that, most 99.9% of your shifting problems with a Honda will go away. This one here is probably going to take some work. It didn't want to come out. Neither did the end plug. It's doing pretty good. Can't have too much lube, and you can't work it too much. I can't stress how much it needs to be free. And then the two end plugs that go on there are both small ones. End plug goes, or the O-ring goes in again. And this one here, you can actually do it after you bolt it to the valve body. Sometimes I do that, especially if it's hanging up really bad, because once you tighten this down, it's going to change everything, because these clips on this one go in from the top. Some of the Hondas, they come in from the bottom. This one comes in from the top, so you can put these in after the fact. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and bolt this all down, get it the way it needs to be, and then work my valves in and out of there. Make sure your end plugs are back up against the clip, and make sure that we are nice and free. And go ahead and check our other two valves here. That valve's hanging up. I'm going to take that one out. work on it. Usually these don't hang up, but when you get these differential bearings start coming out or coming apart, these other valves start hanging up. But usually it's these two CPC valves where all your problem is at. Situation. And what you can do a lot of times, you get this back to where it's dragging, and you can take you a bushing driver and smack it on here. Alright, that usually frees it up. And we gotta make sure our spring goes back where it's supposed to be. I don't want it cocked off to the side like it is right now. What you want to do is go ahead and you got a spring that fits like that one does. You want to go ahead and stroke your valve, and you want to stroke it all the way to the end of its stroke, and it'll straighten that spring out. You want to make sure it's able to do that before you go putting the unit all the way together. Find out that it won't go to the bottom of its bore. Alright, these two pipes are both the same. Seven and an eighth. Both your accumulators are the same, and the springs. Outer spring, 2-inch 585. 757, 102, inner spring, 2-inch 17 thousandths, 496, 99. Make sure they're the same. Alright, let's see what we got here. gonna have to leave these bolts the way they are so we get there to it. Our separator plate. On our stator, usually in the kit, especially if you get a Trans-Tech kit, you're going to get two O-rings, two green ones. You want the smaller green one. This is not where it goes, but this is where I put it. I don't really know where this O-ring goes unless it's for a torque converter. That's what the other green one's for, but I've never seen one that small. This is where I put this green one. It's a little bit fatter than the one that goes here, and it seals better, but it's a pain to put on. Alright, then in our kit, we get the big drill bit, and we get a bunch of these small ones. The reason you get a bunch of small ones is it's very easy to break it off in there. And you can get it out, but it's a pain. So you gotta be very careful when you're drilling this thing out. And then I'll show you where to drill at. Alright, that little drill bit does not want to cut it. And I don't want to break it off in there. So I'll get me another one. Alright, the large drill bit, drill out that hole right there. Just deburr a little bit once you're done. That hole right there. And then something you want to do before you drill this thing, they want you to connect these two passages right here, and they want you to drill in from this direction. It's a little too steep for me, and it's easier to break them there, so I go in right here. And it gives you more room to work with, also gives you more room to get this thing out of there if you break it. But one thing you do want to check before you do that is to make sure that nobody put a Sonax valve in here. Now I seriously doubt someone has, because this unit hadn't been gone into before, but it's always something that you want to check, because you can't have two holes. See how there's a hole in the end right there? If this was a Sonax valve, and this land right here, it would be drilled all the way through also. So just make sure it's not drilled through anywhere on this land, and then you're good to go to drill that out. Since we pulled these out, we'll go ahead and do our springs. Got 3" 349, 585, 72. Inside of that is a bumper spring, 7/30, 383, 71. On the outside we got 196, inch 490, 218, and this all sits on there, and this bolt has a little tip on it. little tip rides right in that groove. So let's get that started. Line that up. Push it down. And then make sure it's lined up before you go tightening it down. Alright, these 3 tubes are all the same. 3-inch, 354. All the diameters of the tubes are the same, 317. This tube over here, seven and 3/4. This is where the big plug goes. I usually do not change this. I will, if I push on the plug and it's moving around, I'll go ahead and I can get it out easy. I'll go ahead and change it. But this is fitting tight. It don't want to move. It's already sealing fine, so I'm not going to change it. All right. I should have done this while it was hot. Probably would have come right off. Okay, it's not wanting to. So it's bearing puller time. And this little attachment here came out of a bearing puller kit for the old Chrysler 670s, 470s. I used to have really bad bearing problems with the differentials, and it was a tool kit to change that in the car, where you didn't have to pull the unit out. That's where that came from. I hardly ever see those units anymore. In fact, I haven't seen one in a long time. So you just need something to push against. I was taking it up so high. uncommon for that to happen. This fairly tight so it don't try to pull around that lip. Stick this back in the cooker again, although it did move a little bit. Usually this one over here comes off a bit easier. Like I said, I should have done it while it was hot, not let it cool down. But I had other problems and it took my mind away from it. This has been a week of problems. In case you're wondering, got that from Matco. It's an MST 4517. Alright, the big bearing goes on this side, thin bearing goes on the other side. I'm going to go press this all on. The one that goes in the case over here is the thin one, and I think, no, the thick one is this one on top right here. So it just slides in there. It usually just falls right in. There we go. Alright, the bearing for this side is wrong also. It was way too big. So we're at another standstill there. Go ahead and do our drums and our shafts ready. So I usually start with the side I marked with an X. Now some of these on the balance pistons on these, some of them are steel, so they give you O-rings for them. These were rubber molded. Find the biggest O-ring that'll fit on here without being loose. That's way too loose. That's about right. Taper of the tips of our snap rings going to face up. Alright, we got our cushion plate. The dish faces up. I guess I should measure all this out for you in case you ever get one in a box like I did once. This side, this cushion is 52 thousandths. The steels are 80. I'm sure they're all 80. Yeah. I mean, you can eventually figure this stuff out, but I hate it when they bring them to me in a box. 122 thousandths. 71. Especially Hondas, I hate it when they bring them to me in a box. Some of these Hondas can be really difficult.
The Honda is a B7XA. The code on the bow body? Yeah, it was code. Okay, so he had HTM-2. So P7T HTM-2. Yeah, P7T. Paul 7 Tom.
Alright, steel's on this side, 79 thousandths. There's no cushion plate. Pressure plate, 125. $70 thousandths on the snap ring. There's so many different variations on the parts in these things. It is very specific about, you know, how many ID marks are on the teeth, how many teeth it has, all the measurements of it. There's just a ton of different parts for these things, so you got to be careful. All my wrenches are in that little drawer.
This one? Oh yeah.
Alright, so we got flat bearing, cage bearing, our gear, flat bearing, our washer with the beveled end, faces in. We got our 2 half moon washers. Our retainer with the dish facing down. Our snap ring with our taper of our tips is going to face up. These sealing rings down here, I normally don't change them. They've gotten better in these later kits, but the earlier kits, they would be so expanded out, you can almost always break them trying to get them down into the deal. So I just always rerun them. They don't need to be changed. We got our flat washer, flat bearing, cage bearing, our gear, and our flat bearing. And we'll Start with our X again. And our O-ring to fit in there nice and snug, expanded. Here again, we picked the biggest one we can get on there without it being too loose. That's too loose. I forgot to mention on the back of these, there's these check valves. You need to make sure there's no debris down in the hole, and it should hold the oil, and it should release it when it's pushed down. So make sure all that happens. Taper of our snap ring is going to be up again. Cushion, dish up, 66 thousandths. Steels, 91. Pressure plate, 112. Snap ring, 70. Taper up. Alright, dish with the dish up, 76, 78. $104, 71, Now these sealing rings I will change, especially if the converter's gotten black or purple, because these rings get super hot when that happens. Now the ones that are plastic like this you can't do this to, but the ones that are kind of this, I don't know what you would call them, kind of springy and they're bendable. Just kind of tweak them like that. Finally, because they sit in just like this, you want to make it to where they are together, and then just like that, and make sure that they're on the right side when you put them on here. You want to make sure that they're not sitting in there like that. You can put grease on these if you want to help keep them in the bore. Alright, lube up your O-rings. We got our flat bearing, our caged bearing, our gear sits on top of that, flat bearing, and this washer, this end down, and make sure it's all splined up. Drum on there. Alright, there we go. We got collar, flat bearing, 2 cage bearings. Our gear. We have a it's sticking up right here. Our flat bearing goes on, and our race goes on top. Alright, about all we can do to this unit. Take that back, we can do the tubes and rear cover. Let me go get that. On this side, it takes this shim and then this oil slinger. It's going to sit on top. And then our race, when we get the right one, is going to fit on top of that. Down on here, takes our washer with the lip. The lip's going to face up. Our reverse idler is going to go just like so. Our magnet goes in here just like that. Go ahead, and usually these are stuck in the case. Whichever side they're stuck on, just leave them. And normally you're going to screw them up trying to get them out. Just take you some sandpaper and buff that off. Just going to have to be very careful when you put your case halves together that you don't cut the gasket. Alright, in this kit we didn't get a new washer for our drain deal. So we're just going to put that back on. There's a magnet on the end of that, so clean that off. This is just a 3/8 square. linkage seal out in the back. Just leave it out for right now. Somebody borrowed my snap ring pliers, didn't put them back in the right spot. Alright, on your tubes out here, just pull those off, pull that up. Go ahead and clean that out. You notice that you got a slot right there. That's where that fits. So there's an O-ring on the outside, and there's an O-ring on the inside. The O-ring that you need and put it down in the very bottom. If it fits too small like that one is, just take it, give it a little stretch. It won't go too much where it's pushing itself up out of the bore. Put your other O-ring on here, put this on here, and you're going to line that up. Alright, where's my taper? I'll taper up. You want the opening away from that opening. Alright, looks good. We're all the way down. Now this one here, you gotta get a new fitting for that. It sure does make a lot of noise. Alright, same here. We put our O-ring down inside. Make sure that it fits all the way out to the edge. Don't try to take this out. There's no need to. There's nothing under there that you need to change if you could get it out, and you're going to probably destroy it trying to get it out. Put that back down on there. Put the taper over tips up again. Opening away from that opening. Alright, we're all the way down in the groove. Okay, now we're at a standstill. Coming in here and borrowing my stuff and putting it all back in the wrong spot. Alright, we're at a standstill until we get the valve body in that bearing. We'll be back when that happens. Alright, pretty sure where we left off is here. We got our dowel pins in here. If you see these filters, take them things out, throw them away. We got our check valve in here, white spring, 1 notch, 218 thousandths ball with the spring. I think we already measured all that. Got the plugs in here. So I think where we were was right here on this plate and this valve body. I think we already showed everything on here. I think we showed everything on all the valve bodies. We were just waiting on the right valve body to come in, our main valve body. Alright, so let's measure our bolts and get these where they belong. Alright, we'll start in the front here, work our way around clockwise. 3-inch 175, 997, 2-inch 790. These should all three be the same. These two over here should be the same. 2-inch 391. This one's longer. 2-inch 792. 1-inch 604. 2-inch 791. And we can go ahead and put this on. It'll only fit one way. Both these bolts are the same. 4-inch 951. Alright. Filter on. Got a long bolt and a short bolt. Short bolt's going to go over here. It is 3-inch 572. Okay, come on now. The long bolt. 3-inch 947. Alright, your reverse selector shaft has a beveled and a recessed end. You want that facing towards you, and that hole facing towards your counter shaft. We've got to our detent here. It's going to sit in there just like this. It'll actually only go one way also. The bolts are both the same. 4-inch 952. Alright. Got our plate. We're gonna lube up our O-ring on here really good. We're going to have to put it on here first because it fits too tight with this green O-ring. If you try to just push it on there like you normally do, you're going to cut the O-ring. So just be careful with it when you're putting it in there and set the whole thing down. Kind of snug on our O-ring, on our dowel pins. My bolts went rolling. Alright, let me get these in there. Start in the back and go clockwise. 2-inch 394, 2-inch 796, 2-inch 796, 2-inch 788, 2-inch 400, 2-inch 786, 3-inch 176, 1-inch 201, our pin for our stator, 3-inch 145, and 312. Put our counter shaft in. Secondary shaft. Main shaft. Got our cage bearing, our gear. Okay, I know what's up. We're sitting down on our main shaft. Yeah, that's why it didn't look right. Alright. We got our slider hub with the recessed end up. Our fork and our selector at this end up. Our cage bearing, our gear, and this gear. Got a shoulder bolt and our keeper. It's going to sit just like that, but it's flat. It's going to sit right on top right here. Bend your tab over. Alright, and move this over here. Alright, pick a proper gasket. Definitely not it. Alright, that should be it. We've already showed it, but just in case. Down inside, we got our washer with the lip on it. The lip faces into the little piece here. Our gear is going to go with the tall side towards the top. We're going to have to be careful of our gasket because we got our dowel pins are still in this side of the case. I don't want to screw them up as we're going down. You want to hold on to that reverse idler so it don't go falling out. Make sure your linkage is in low gear. Our tubes are started in. And gear cocked. Alright. Alright. Bolts in there and then we'll measure them. And that bracket goes there. This bracket goes here. This bracket goes over here. Be all of our bolts. We're going to start here in the corner and go clockwise. And at 5 inches 8/61, 5 inches 77 thousandths, 5 inches 862 thousandths, same, same, 3 inches 702, 2 inches 900, same, 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 3 inches 685, 5 inches 875, same, 5 inches 80 thousandths, same, 5 inches 863, and 5 inches 79 thousandths. Here, I'm tightening these up and then I'm going to change camera angle. And move our reverse idler over. We got our pin. This end's going to face up. We got our 2 caged bearings, our flat washer, this retainer, and our 2 12mm are 1" 552. Got this spring, short end's going to go down, it's going to loop around this pin, just like that. We got our linkage, sits just like that. We got another shoulder bolt with our keeper. Our keeper's going to go on the flat right over here. You have to pull it over to get the bolt started. Bend your tab over. Alright, our part gear. Flat bearing, cage bearing, our gear. It's going to go with this recess side up. Flat bearing, this gear, or this bearing. This gear goes up in the corner here. This gear goes up here. Alright, these washers have a dish to them. You want the dish facing down. Got one right-handed thread, 2 left-handeds. The left-handed have an arrow on them. Be pointing that way. Once you got the nuts down before you stake them, hold your park gear. You should be able to turn the other gears. If you can't, something's off somewhere. more than likely have missed a clutch somewhere. And just stake these down. And we got our pivot pin for our actuator. The hook end is going to go in this hole. The other end is going to sit in this hole. And our pin's going to go right there. We got a big tube and a small tube. You can't screw up where they go. Not all trannies have these tubes, and of course it takes a different valve body if they don't take the tubes. And it won't have this oil slinger right here. There's 5 millimeters on the bolts. Get our gasket. The ones that have the tubes will have this shaped hole on it. We got 2 dowel pins again, one here and here. Usually they stay in the case. The O-rings that go on these tubes are just a little bit fatter than the rest of them that are in there. Usually they are the ones that get stuck in these washers. Alright, you don't have to. Sometimes it helps to put a little grease on these tubes. And also something I didn't mention, and it's very rare that these need bushings that I've run into, but the way that you check them is you can take some cellophane tape and put you a layer on there to where it doesn't overlap, and when you push the tube in there, if it pushes the tape off, it's tight enough. If it doesn't push the tape off, then you need to change your bushings. I've only changed bushings in a few Hondas. It's just normally they're not that wore out. You just kind of have to work it around until it decides to drop on there. Alright, our linkage seal. Of course it's going to go on just like that. Lube the crap out of it. All right. Get our bolts in here and we'll measure. Alright, I guess we'll start here and work our way around clockwise. Inch 792, a lot of these are going to be all the same. It's the same. Inch 395, inch 795, same. Should be the same. 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 And now we are an inch 395. Should be the same. The same. And the same. And we should be back to the big one. 8" 795. This should be the same all the way down. Alright. Our neutral switch. And I forgot this bolt goes on that bracket. Alright, this short bolt up here is 846 thousandths. Try not to mess up the marks on your neutral switch. That's how I line them up. The two neutral switch bolts has those two washers. They are inch 140, and I just line them back up where they were and tighten them down. Shield. Two short bolts are 691 thousandths. Alright, on this up here, there's two different gaskets. Notice how this area is different right in here. So make sure what gasket you had before you took it off. This is our vent pipe. This one here, the longest pipe with they all have filters on them. If they're gone, it's okay. They'll work just fine without it. Just make sure that it's free. The medium one goes there and the short one goes over here. Little fat O-rings again. That's the wrong one. solenoid goes on up here. Brown one goes in the bottom hole over here. The black one goes in the top. Lockup solenoid has screens in it. Make sure that they're free. 3 bolts that hold it are 1 inch 10 thousandths. Alright, let go. Might be difficult. Alright, 6 bolts hold this on. This bracket goes here in the corner. 6 bolts are 1'2". We got our 2 speed sensors. They are both the same, but I do mark where they came out of. Up there. And our filter tube. Alright, bolts for the filler tube, speed sensors, and shift solenoids are all the same. And there's also a bolt that's going to go here for cooler lines. They're all the same, 843 thousandths. Cooler lines. I'll have these banjo bolts. The long one goes over by the differential. One goes on each side of the cooler line. $17 millimeters on the banjo bolts. And a lot of times they don't give you the washers that go on these pressure sensors. You can flat file them. It's usually what I end up doing. If you try to put them on without flat filing them, they'll probably leak. Most of your converter places put the O-ring on the torque converter, but they give you one in the kit, so I always throw it on there. Other than that, we're